My transmigrated legitimate sister was infertile for 3 years after marriage. Unwilling to let the Marquis take a concubine, she tricked me into the manor. Being a concubine is a lowly position, so I won't let you become one. Once you give birth, I'll find you a poor family to be a proper wife. How respectable. After losing my purity, when I was imprisoned in the manor having a difficult labor, she feared word would leak out and she'd lose face, refusing to call a doctor. I suffered for 3 days, 1 corpse, 2 lives, and was thrown into a mass grave. When I opened my eyes again, my legitimate sister was persuading me, now that the die is cast, being a concubine is a lowly position. I looked at the silent Marquis beside her and said with a gentle smile, I am willing to be brother-in-law's concubine. After getting me drunk and sending me to brother-in-law Shenji's bed, my legitimate sister cried all night, and Shenji coaxed her all night. At this moment, both of them had faint dark circles under their eyes. She pouted coquettishly and hit Shenji. Are you satisfied now? This sister of mine is only 16 and more obedient and docile than me. Although her birth mother was a prostitute, this sister of mine was raised pure at home. You got a bargain. See, Shenja lovingly held her hand and kissed it gently. Just a vulgar thing. Can't compare to Wanner. My legitimate sister smiled with satisfaction and reached for my hand. Being a concubine is a lowly position, so I won't let you become one. Once you give birth, your sister will find you a poor family to be a proper wife. How respectable. I lowered the hairpin that had been pressed against my neck in my previous life, and coldly watched the two of them. In my previous life, I thought I had already lost my chastity, so I might as well kill myself. But when my legitimate sister saw I wouldn't listen, she ordered people to lock me in the backyard. Shenja came to the backyard 3 times a month, never missing a single visit. A year later, I became pregnant with Shenja's child, thinking I would regain my freedom after giving birth. But I never expected that during my difficult labor, my legitimate sister refused to call a doctor, fearing word would get out and she'd lose face. I was in pain for 3 days, and both lives were lost. Seeing that I didn't speak, my legitimate sister just assumed I had agreed. I dug my nails hard into my palms, suppressing my disgust toward Shenji, and smiled sweetly. I am willing to be brother-in-law's concubine. Hearing me say this, both Shenja and my legitimate sister were stunned. Her expression turned cold in an instant. Do you know that women who are willing to become concubines are all despicable? I hurriedly knelt on the ground and kowtowed 3 times to my legitimate sister. This little sister is devoted. I only beg elder sister to be lenient and grant my wish. My legitimate sister thought for a moment, then suddenly smiled. It is improper right now, so why not wait until you've given birth to a son, then take you as a concubine? She was deceiving me. In my previous life, she imprisoned me in the backyard, and even when I died in childbirth, she refused to call a doctor. I am afraid that when the time comes and I give birth, while I am weak, she'll quietly dispose of me. But I had no way out. My legitimate sister leaned lazily in brother-in-law's arms and said with a smile, You are not allowed to spend the night in her room. No one in the manor is allowed to call her auntie. The monthly allowance, you give it to her once each time you visit her room. Only after she bears a boy can she be taken as a concubine. Fearing Shenja wouldn't agree, my sister pouted coquettishly. In our era, there is no wife as magnanimous as me. Shenja understood how much grievance my legitimate sister had to endure to take me as a concubine. He and my sister were deeply in love. My brother-in-law was a young and promising junior general. My legitimate sister was naturally brilliant, with countless ingenious ideas that others could never think of. Their story was as legendary as a storybook tale. He defied the imperial decree and refused a marriage for her. She rode beyond the frontier for him. My brother-in-law vowed to respect my sister, promising her a lifetime, with just the 2 of them. The only regret was that 4 years ago, when bandits besieged the city in winter, my brother-in-law failed to protect her. My sister was frozen in the snow for 3 days, leaving her with a chronic illness, and she could no longer bear children. The old matriarch of the family threatened with her own life, demanding my brother-in-law take a concubine to continue the family line. My sister refused to eat or drink, her face washed with tears, saying she regretted not going home and staying here for my brother-in-law. He embraced my legitimate sister with heartache. Whatever you say. Just tidy up a side room in the back courtyard. My legitimate sister said meaningfully to the maidservants. This is my younger sister. If any of you bully her from now on, you'll be making an enemy of me. As they left, the maidservants glanced at me with either pity or disdain. When I returned to my room, 3 taels of silver had already been placed on the table. In my past life, every time Shenja came to my room, he would give me 3 taels of silver, humiliating me like humiliating a prostitute. So I would rather die than take that money that degraded me. My food was always spoiled. My clothes were always torn, but now I carefully spread them out, counting them one by one, accepting them one by one. What they owe me, not a single coin can be missing. The maidservant Xiaozhu beside me watched me haggle over every penny, wanting to speak but holding back. I smiled and asked her, "Does everyone look down on me?" Xiaozhu was only 12 years old. She bit her lower lip and shook her head. I feel like Miss is crying, but there are clearly no tears falling. While we were talking, the maid Xiaomei poked her head in from outside. She had jet black shiny hair, and when she smiled, 2 dimples appeared. "Miss Q, the plum blossoms outside are blooming beautifully. I picked a branch for you to put in a vase. The master is coming tonight." When Shi Shenji came to my room, he still seemed somewhat uncomfortable. The candlelight flickered. I was writing a letter under the plum blossoms by the window. Seeing him come in, my face flushed, and I lowered my head. In my past life, Shenja and I were intimate countless times, yet we never talked. He always liked to blow out the lamp, pull off his robe, and cover my entire body with it. Occasionally when he was intoxicated, he would lose himself and call out my sister's nickname, Warner, as if he was the one being forced, not me. The room was silent. Shenji was so embarrassed, he didn't know how to start talking. There is a character I can't remember how to write, and I happen to want to find someone to ask. I smiled at him. You can read. I can read. There used to be a scholar living next door to my home. See, Shenji leaned in to look at my writing, unable to hide his admiration. Your handwriting is beautiful, unlike Warner, whose writing always looks like chicken scratch. When the snow fell outside, it was so quiet that every sound could be heard. The lamp oil happened to run out at this moment. I leaned past him to dip the brush in ink, and he naturally wrapped his arm around my waist. Brother-in-law, there was perhaps a hint of forbidden meaning to it. His body stiffened, and the grip on my waist tightened. When the mood was high, there was no need to light the lamp again. He asked me breathlessly, with keen interest. If you liked me, why did you resist so fiercely that night? I held back my nausea, my voice hoarse. I am also a girl from a respectable family. I fantasized about my beloved proposing with the 3 letters and 6 rights, a proper marriage. Shi Shenja was silent for a while. After his desire faded, his affection cooled a few degrees. I've already promised your sister that I will never take a concubine in this lifetime. I tugged weakly at the hem of his clothes. Next month, I heard you and my sister are going to the spring banquet. I want to go too. When someone refuses an excessive first request, they usually won't refuse a second harmless one. My legitimate sister's support came from 2 sources. First, Shenja, and second, Prince Yang, Li Lang. In my previous life, my legitimate sister met Prince Yang at the spring banquet. Shi Shenja got jealous and had a huge fight with her. I need to get close to Prince Yang. Shi Shenja instinctively wanted to refuse me. It is also the old madam's wish. I'll follow behind you too and won't disturb you. Shi Shenja thought for a moment, then gave a soft hum of agreement. The snow outside was falling heavily, rustling softly. Hearing him agree, I was delighted and hurriedly got up to help him dress. Shi Shenja seemed unaccustomed to being attended to for a long time, and actually instinctively stepped back. After a moment of daze, he sat down on the edge of the bed, letting me kneel on the ground to put on his boots and socks. The snow's glow cast a hazy light in the room. Shi Shenji leaned against the bed, watching me draped in my inner garment, head bowed as I served him, carefully smoothing out the wrinkles in his socks. he said, as if lost in thought. You look a lot like your sister, yet you are very different. Yes, my legitimate sister is proud and self-respecting. She wouldn't humble herself like me, helping him dress. I lifted my eyes and caught sight of his deep, stunningly beautiful features. Meeting my gaze, Shenja uncomfortably averted his eyes, his expression deep and still as water again. Then hurry back, brother-in-law. It is snowing outside, and sister is waiting for you. This call of brother-in-law startled Shenja. He frowned. Don't call me brother-in-law. I looked at him cautiously. Shenja couldn't figure out what I should call him either. He waved his hand, forget it. Outside, the snowflakes were as big as cushions. Worried that my legitimate sister would be upset, he braved the heavy snow to go back and keep her company. I stood at the doorway, watching his figure disappear into the wind and snow. Wasn't it supposed to be just the two of us? Why do we have to bring Queer along? My legitimate sister got angry. It was Mother's idea. Shenja patiently coaxed her. Queer will ride in a separate sedan chair with Mother. They'll stop by to worship Buddha along the way and won't be traveling with us. Who said you could call her Queer? My legitimate sister angrily brushed away Shenjai's hand. I'll say it again, Shenjai Bodhisattvas. Gods, Buddhas, that is all feudal superstition. None of it exists. These words were heard loud and clear by old Madame Shai as she walked in. She fingered her prayer beads, murmured a word of penance, and when she looked up at my legitimate sister again, displeasure was already in her eyes. Is it proper for a wife to address the Marquis by his given name? Is that in accordance with the rules? My legitimate sister didn't answer, shooting a resentful glare at Shenji. On one side was his wife, on the other his mother. Caught in the middle, he was in quite a bind. A general on the battlefield, caught up in the petty squabbles between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, looked awkward and ill at ease. When Shenja stood with his hands at his sides and his head lowered, he reminded me of the eunuchs who came to announce the imperial decree when my legitimate sister was granted her marriage. Just bring Queer along, she is the concubine you brought in. Old Madame Shi glanced at the legitimate elder sister with a calm and composed expression. Don't blame others either. If you could bear children yourself, you wouldn't need to go pray to Buddha today, and none of this trouble would have happened. Old Madame Shi had just left when the legitimate elder sister smashed a vase. She glared at Shenji with hatred. You just let her humiliate me like that. Shenji stammered. She is my mother, after all. She says I can't bear children, but has she ever thought about why I can't? At this point, the legitimate elder sister's tears streamed down. That winter, when the bandits besieged the city to cover your retreat, I lay in the snow for 3 days and ruined my body from the cold. If you hadn't lost that battle, would I need to put up with your mother's attitude? Having his shortcomings exposed in front of everyone, Shenja stood there dazed, extremely embarrassed. The maids and servants below kept their heads down, not daring to breathe loudly. I've wronged you. He reached for the legitimate elder sister's hand, but she turned away, wiping her tears. For your Shi family, I swallowed my pride and brought my own sister into this household. You all got what you wanted, while I bear all the infamy. Back then, Prince Yang was also deeply in love with me. I truly regret choosing you. You should know that for my sake. Prince Yang still hasn't married to this day. Hearing the legitimate elder sister mention his old rival in love, Shenji became anxious. He hasn't taken a wife, but he has taken 5 concubines. Elder sister was annoyed. He still hasn't taken a wife after all. Besides, all 5 concubines look like me, which shows he still can't let go of me, his white moonlight. If you keep talking, I'll go find him tonight and cuckold you big time. At this point, Shenji got angry and swept elder sister up in his arms. Elder sister cried out coquettishly and struggled, but couldn't resist Shenji's forcefulness. The maids exchanged glances and quietly closed the door behind them as they left. Before I even left the courtyard, Granny Jo from the old madam's side waved at me with a smile. Concubine Lin, the old madam wants you to pick out a nice outfit to wear for the spring banquet and Buddha worship. I thanked her and was about to go, but then heard elder sister calling me through the window. Quar, come in and help me with my makeup. I looked at Granny Jo awkwardly, and she quietly pulled me aside. Don't worry, concubine. The old madam values you. Once you give birth to a son in the future, your position will be secure. I didn't know how to respond, and Granny Jo lovingly patted my hand. The old madam won't put you in a difficult spot. Go on now. I gave her a grateful look and hurried to Elder Sister's room. Elder Sister looked languid, leaning soft and boneless in Shi Shenji's arms. She didn't actually need me to serve her. She was just calling for someone to spite the old madam. That old woman called you concubine, and you actually dared to answer to it. I lowered my head, not making a sound. My legitimate sister looked at the clothes on me, washed until faded, and let out a cold snort. Don't covet the benefits the old madam promised you either. She just wants to use you to bring me down. It is just clothes. Quiere, pick out some clothes and jewelry and send them to my little sister. Our Lin family isn't some destitute household that needs to wear her hand-me-downs. My legitimate sister yawned, coquettishly complaining that Shi Shenji had just been rude to her. If it were my little sister instead, silent like a dead fish, or a block of wood. What fun could you get from that? My face burned with embarrassment, and I lowered my head. Shi Shenji listened, his gaze falling thoughtfully on the back of my neck, then sliding over my waist. His eyes darkened, seemingly stirred by this shadowy contrast. Ignoring my legitimate sister's startled cry, he pulled her by the waist and sank into the layered bed curtains. The spring banquet was held at the foot of Puji Temple's mountain. The madams and young ladies went up the mountain to worship Buddha, while the young talents held poetry gatherings and archery competitions below. It was also a chance to assess potential in-laws. My legitimate sister disdained staying with the boudoir ladies, instead holding forth among the men, laughing and joking without reserve. Your daughter-in-law is truly bold and carefree, said Madame Jo, who had always been at odds with old Madame Shi. With a smile, still so unrestrained even after marriage, clearly you dote on her. Old Madame Shi took a sip of tea and didn't respond, but called me over. Go call the Marquis over here. Standing there with Prince Yang is making us a laughingstock. Zi Shenja had just put on a stern face to challenge my legitimate sister to an archery contest. But she had argued with him a few days ago, and they hadn't made up yet. She completely ignored him, and was chatting and laughing with a man beside her instead. All the noble ladies in the capital knew how Prince Yang and Shenjie had fought tooth and nail over marrying my legitimate sister back then. Now that she was ignoring her husband and chatting with Prince Yang, everyone was watching the spectacle. The madam is calling for you. I held the quiver and curtsied. Seeing me, both the man beside my legitimate sister and Shi Shenji froze. The old madam had personally picked out my dress and jewelry, and taught me what kind of makeup to wear. My mother had once worked at a music house, and through constant exposure, I had learned her makeup skills, lightly brushed moth-like brows, a goose-yellow rukun paired with a light green cloak, and a plain silver sparrow hairpin. In the mirror, I looked exactly like my legitimate sister at 16, yet appeared slightly more delicate than her. Si Shenja was used to seeing me dressed plainly, and for a moment couldn't even recognize me, unable to hide the amazement in his eyes. You are queer. Meanwhile, the man beside my legitimate sister stared at my face, unable to snap out of it for a long while. Who are you? Seeing his aggressive gaze, Shenja was displeased and stood in front of me. This is my wife's younger sister. Prince Yang must be amused. Although my illegitimate sister's birth mother was a prostitute, my sister herself was raised clean and pure at home. I am just waiting to pick a good husband for her and marry her off in grand style. Legitimate sister's words praised on the surface, but disparaged underneath, and all the noble young men withdrew their gazes. Seeing legitimate sister displeased, Prince Yang lost his interest and said with a smile, "Just asking. The old madam wants brother-in-law to come over for tea together." I didn't look at anyone, only carefully watching Shenji's reaction. Shenji was pleased. Let's go. But I didn't walk alongside him, thinking about how to get close to Prince Yang. Why doesn't Queer walk with me? I am afraid others will gossip, but you and I have already. It is different. I stood still and looked at him. Brother-in-law, You know, legitimate sister can't tolerate me. Someday I'll have to leave you and find somewhere to shelter myself. Si Shenji couldn't refute, standing frozen in place. Spring banquets always had spring pancakes. Shi Shenja didn't like spring pancakes and casually gave them away as rewards. For over 10 years, the Marquis comes to the spring banquet every year, but never eats spring pancakes. Every time he gives them away as rewards. He comes every year. I took a sip of tea and smilingly continued old Madame Shi's conversation. He comes every year. The medicine king Bodhisattva here is very efficacious. The Marquis wants to pray to the Bodhisattva for me. Seeing the Marquis's filial piety, the medicine king Bodhisattva couldn't bear not to be efficacious. I secretly noted this in my heart. While I was making tea for Shenji, he noticed the wound on my hand. How did you get hurt? Quer has been practicing archery. This girl is clumsy and can't learn it well. I've also advised her not to waste her effort. The old madam blew away the tea steam. This child is wholeheartedly trying to please a certain someone, yet that someone is still in the dark. But Shi Shenji was puzzled. You just said you wanted to leave and not stay in the Shi manor. So why? Old Madam Shi sighed, meaningfully. If she wants to leave, can't you ask her to stay? While they were talking, someone came from outside to invite me, Miss Quer. Our young miss has obtained a rare prize and invites you to come take a look. See, good things are naturally coveted by others. Old Madam Shi smiled. Go on, good child. I heard Shi Shenji ask from behind, when did mother start caring so much about Quer? This Quer comes to my room daily to keep me company while reciting scriptures and copying sutras, and attends to me when I take medicine. She is 100 times more filial than your good wife. The maidservant didn't say whose servant she was. When we reached a secluded spot in the woods, she vanished in a flash. I had already guessed partially, and now I was even more certain who it was. An arrow grazed past my cheek and embedded itself into a tree. The one who broke her heart wasn't me, it was Shi Shenji. An arrow grazed past my shoulder, startling the birds into flight. We both love but cannot have. I thought your highness would understand my feelings. Just now I was gazing longingly at Shi Shenji. The Prince of Yong should be able to guess my feelings. I could sense that the sharp arrow aimed at my heart had been lowered. How did you guess it was me? Your highness's archery is second to none. The maidservant just now was dressed lavishly, and I have no noble ladies I am close with in the capital. You are quite clever, Prince Yong. Li Lang smiled. You didn't disappoint me. Then would your highness be willing to make a deal with this commoner that only profits and never loses? Li Lang didn't answer me. I mustered my courage. Your highness doesn't need to do anything. Just turn a blind eye to whatever rumors you hear. Li Lang released the arrow from his hand, striking the kingfisher that had just taken flight. He didn't look at me, nor at the twitching kingfisher on the ground, and strode away with his long legs. It is yours. Rumors spread through the capital that Prince Yong was about to take a consort. He had taken a fancy to a woman at the spring banquet, to win her heart. He personally hunted a kingfisher, and made a kingfisher feather hairpin as a token of love. When the Empress Dowager heard, she was eager to play matchmaker and bestow a marriage upon Prince Yong. When the rumors reached the mansion, I was attending to my legitimate sister as she removed her makeup. After seeing my skill at styling hair that day, she demanded I attend to her grooming every day. In the mirror, my legitimate sister wore the willow leaf brows I often drew, adorned with jewels and finery. If she were 5 years younger and dressed more plainly, it would truly be hard to tell us apart. She looked at the kingfisher feather hairpin on my head, suddenly flew into a rage, and raised her hand to slap me. You seduced Prince Yong after just one meeting. I hurriedly knelt on the ground, not daring to talk back. This scene happened to be witnessed by Shi Shenjie, because today I was supposed to accompany him to attend to the old madam taking her medicine. Shi Shenjie was stunned. Why did you hit her? My legitimate sister sneered. I hit my own sister, and you need to interfere. She is not even your concubine yet, and you are already protecting her. Shi Shenjie obviously didn't believe her. I stood behind my legitimate sister, biting my lower lip, tears hanging in my eyes, shaking my head at him. Don't argue with my legitimate sister because of me. Shishenja was displeased. Mother has been waiting for a while. Let's hurry. After leaving the old madam's courtyard, Shenji ordered a maid to fetch medicine for my wounds. Under the lamplight, Shenji leaned in very close, looking at my red and swollen face. Did she treat you like this back at home too? I didn't speak, just lowered my head and shed tears. This lowering of my head let Shenji see the kingfisher, feather hairpin on my head. He knew I lived simply and didn't have such expensive jewelry. Thinking of the recent rumors, Shenji's gaze darkened. Is Prince Yang trying to make a move on you? Please stop asking. I wiped my tears. I don't know what to do. I didn't really believe that Prince Yang would just let the rumors go unchecked. If Prince Yang said that everything was just hearsay, an exaggeration, that he hadn't transferred his affections to someone else. Whatever I told Shenji, once the lies were exposed, it would all become a laughingstock of my own delusions. So it is better not to say anything, whether the Prince of Yang has truly shifted his affections, or wants to discuss with my legitimate sister about getting rid of me. Let Shenji guess for himself. But essentially, both amount to disregarding Shenji's dignity, snatching things from his territory. Back in Mother's music house, if a girl a man had claimed was snatched away by someone else, men would come to blows over it. Mother, they really like that lady, don't they? Not at all, they're doing it for their own pride. Mother stroked my head. Remember, what men in this world love most is always themselves. I looked at Mother, half understanding. If a man loves and admires you, it is most likely because he sees his idealized self in you. There was endless loneliness in Mother's eyes. When a man rescues a woman from the pleasure quarters, it is not necessarily love. It might just be him wanting to play the hero. By the time I understood this, it was already too late. A man's pride and dignity outweigh so-called love 1,000 times over. Shishenja might not love me right now, but he certainly believes I belong to him. Even when my legitimate sister beat and scolded me, I saw anger and frustration in his eyes. Was the anger because something belonging to him was being handled carelessly? Was the frustration because when he thought of being controlled by my legitimate sister, he felt just as awkward and pathetic as I did? If the Prince of Yang forces his way, I won't just stand by and do nothing. Shenji looked seriously into my eyes. After all, you are my person, an incompetent, cowardly man saying such things. I almost laughed out loud. Mother was right. Men's sweet talk is just confessions, and praise directed at themselves, speaking of forever and always, as if all variables were within one's control, speaking of growing old together, as if one would live 100 years, and the one beside them would never grow tired. At this moment, Shenja must truly believe he has the power to contend with Prince Yang and my legitimate sister. If he wants to play the hegemon king of Chu, I naturally must play Yuji. It is not that Yuji needs the hegemon. It is that the king needs Yuji to adorn his hegemony. I smiled softly, tilting my head to rest against his chest, as if with the attachment of a fledgling. Quer knows how brother-in-law plans to utterly defeat Prince Yang. How so? I placed his hand over my lower belly, smiling frivolously. Prince Yang doesn't have children yet. Why doesn't brother-in-law secretly impregnate me first? And when his child returns someday, they'll acknowledge brother-in-law as their father. Shenji really thought I had some brilliant idea. He listened seriously, only to find me smiling mischievously. Very well, Princess Yang, tonight, I shall cuckold him indeed. This subtle and secretive scenario aroused him even more. I was naturally willing to please him, bed curtains layered like mountains, concealing resentment against the heavens. Spring waters overflowing, flooding back into the sea of sin. He waged vigorous conquest within the gauze canopy, and I submitted as his vassal. I watched his heart swell as large as his desire. At this moment, he must fit his own imagination perfectly. He is a husband who can make his wives and concubines obedient, and in the future, he will be a father who dominates everything. He caressed my belly with reluctant fondness, imagining there was already a child of his inside, enough to prove his capability as a man. To prove his prowess in bed was no less than Prince Yang's. Amid the bed full of spring passion, I desperately let my soul drift away, advancing or retreating. Either way was death by 1,000 cuts. Shi Shenji was satisfied with my utter defeat, yet still called my soul back. Tell me about your past. After my legitimate elder sister fell into the water at 9, she became like a different person. The Lin family wasn't large, but hierarchy was well maintained, and the concubines and children born of concubines were fairly obedient. But my legitimate sister couldn't tolerate us. She didn't blame father for his promiscuity, but resented us for being shameless. First, during the year of the natural disaster, Jo, a concubine who had been sold to the Lin family by her own family in exchange for food, was scolded by her legitimate older sister. Her sister called her inherently low class, asking why she couldn't be content with her lot and instead chose to debase herself by becoming a concubine. Which was more important, dignity and reputation, or starving to death and losing one's honor? Concubine Jo was gentle and quiet by nature. Being openly mocked and subtly ridiculed by her day after day, she didn't dare argue, only eating her meals mixed with tears. In a year of good harvest, Concubine Jo hanged herself. Then there was my mother. My mother was a pipa player from the music house. My father redeemed her freedom. When I was 5, my 10-year-old legitimate sister was already famous throughout the capital, even though my mother had already instructed me to be careful and cautious, not to stand out. But my legitimate sister didn't need any reason to drive me and my mother out. She just clung to father's arm and pouted, "It is either me or her." My mother didn't cry, nor make a scene. She just shielded me and asked father, "How are we? A widow and orphan, supposed to survive. How did you make a living before? Just go back to that." My mother took me back to the music house, tending to the girls' daily needs, doing hair and makeup to earn some money. But she wouldn't let me dress up, nor let me learn songs, dances, or singing. After 5 years of saving up some money, the music house owner, eyeing my face, got some ideas and wanted to keep my mother around. My mother hurriedly took me and moved us elsewhere. We lived next to a private school, cooking soups and meals for the students, taking in mending work, and managed to earn some money too. Sometimes when we met an agreeable student, my mother wouldn't take his money, only asking him to teach me to read and understand reason. After years of toil taking their toll, my mother fell gravely ill. Before she died, she made me swear an oath to never follow her old path. She believed her mistake was trusting a man too easily. Her mistake was thinking a woman's beauty alone was enough to trade for a stable life. But living this life again, I feel my mother blamed herself too much. It wasn't that she misjudged people. It wasn't that she relied on her beauty waiting to be sold. It is this world that pins women down on the chopping board to be devoured. Because of my mother's foresight, I can read account books. I understand poetry and literature, and my handwriting might trace back to some Hanlon scholar in the court. Until half a year ago, my legitimate sister sent a letter saying her shop was short a female accountant who could read ledgers. I didn't want to get involved with her again, but I owed quite a lot of money for mother's funeral expenses. When I arrived at the Shy residence, I drank the welcome wine my legitimate sister prepared for me. When I woke again, what was done was done. 8 years of a beautiful woman with her naive young daughter, struggling to survive in a world full of predatory eyes. In the music house, drunken brutes grabbed mother's hand, insisting she drink with them. Mother didn't dare offend them, so she could only force a smile and try to smooth things over. The sound of kicking at the door in the middle of the night in our shabby house made mother so scared. She cried, yet she gripped the kitchen knife tightly and held me protectively in her arms. When spoken aloud, it sounds so simple. After hearing this, Shunja was actually stunned. "No wonder your calligraphy is so good. I actually didn't know you were also versed in poetry and literature. Those are all old matters now, with no place to put them to use." I found it laughable in my heart, yet had to smile gently, though practicing calligraphy for so long has given me strength in my hands, which laid a foundation for archery. But Shenja thought for a moment. "Your sister Wana writes like ghost scribbles." On the other hand, Prince Yang loves practicing calligraphy the most, and even went to request some wild cursive scripts from His Majesty's collection. If he knew your calligraphy was this good, I am afraid he would get ideas about wanting you again. I've also been thinking, Prince Yang gets along so well with you. Perhaps if you had met him before meeting me, you would have lived a better life. Sold to a marquis residence, the price is low. Sold to a prince's residence, the price is high. It is all selling, does it really matter if it is noble or cheap? I sneered coldly inside, but feigned anger on my face, turning my back to him. Does brother-in-law think just anyone could make where willingly become a concubine? Zishenja's hands started wandering again, sliding down from my waist. Then tell me, Quare, when did you become willing to be my concubine? I suppressed the urge to pull out my hairpin and stab him to death, and said with a smile, guess. Was it the year I was 22 when I won first place in archery before the emperor? That year I was only 8, cautiously surviving with my mother in the music house. How could I have had the chance to see Shenja in his glory before the emperor? Was it when I was 24, after winning the battle, when all the girls in the capital were stealing glances at me? That year I was only 10, begging the landlord with my mother for a 2-day extension. Where would I have had the leisure like those sheltered young ladies of the capital? He carefully recalled his glorious past, yet in truth, none of it had anything to do with me. In the cracks between his and my legitimate sister's legendary lives, my mother and I were running around for a bite of food, a roof over our heads. When exactly was it? You don't even remember yourself. I smiled and shook my head. Do you remember? At the spring banquet 8 years ago, you took pity on a child and gave her a spring pancake? Shenji thought carefully, then shook his head. I don't remember. So that child remembered it for nothing all these years. Could it be that you? Do you remember 8 years ago? There was also such heavy rain. I was terribly sick, and no matter how much medicine I took, nothing worked. My mother carried me on her back up the mountain to pray to the medicine king Bodhisattva. Strangely enough, on the way down I ate half a spring pancake, and my fever actually broke. When I got home, my illness was cured. Shenja looked at me for a long time, saying nothing. After a long while, he actually curled his lips and couldn't help but laugh himself. Just because of half a spring pancake, you devoted yourself to me wholeheartedly? I nodded with certainty, just because of half a spring pancake. No wonder on the day of the spring banquet, you divided the pancake for me and brewed tea. So you were testing whether I still remembered. Shenja laughed. Because he believed it. People don't believe the truth, because sometimes the truth is too true. But they often believe lies because lies are usually false enough. This lie was full of holes, yet half true and half false. 8 years ago, around the time of the spring banquet, there were indeed several extraordinarily heavy rains. Shenja probably remembered. Puji Temple was too far, and I was too sick. My mother didn't believe in bodhisattvas. She braved the heavy rain to beg a doctor to come. But the consultation fee wasn't enough, so she knelt before the doctor in the rain and kowtowed until her forehead bled. My illness was cured by the medicine my mother risked the rain to get. It had nothing to do with him, Shenja, or with the bodhisattva sitting high in the clouds. Yet Shenja was moved. What a silly girl, giving away her heart for half a pancake. Yes, I am not like my legitimate sister, nor like everyone else in the world. My legitimate sister loved General Shi when he was glorious and successful. The world loved Marquis Shi when he was admired by all. Only I love Shi Shenji, the person himself. It has nothing to do with all the titles the world has bestowed upon Shenja. This love is pure and fervent. Even 10,000 deaths could not change it. Even though Prince Yong's power is at its peak, unrivaled in prominence, he still cannot reverse time and return to 8 years ago. With tears in my eyes, I gazed at him in a daze, my eyes full of endless longing, making him tremble. Shi Shenji, in this moment you must pity me too. I am like an ant, like a flower that blooms even without your care, waiting for your mercy. To my legitimate sister Lin Wanner, you Shi Shenji are merely icing on the cake, a tune to liven up a merry feast. But to me, Lin Queer, you are charcoal in the snow, a kindness worth remembering for a lifetime, worth repaying with my body and life. He was silent for a long time, gently wiping away my tears, embracing me with infinite tenderness. I am sorry. All these years I had no idea at all. I said nothing, just let him hold me. The room was filled with warmth, the lamplight soft and gentle. A sudden thunderclap split the sky, and torrential rain poured down. Xiaomei understood my glance and said with a smile, "Unfortunately, the rain gear was left at the old madam's place a few days ago." I persuaded Shi Shenji, why not wait a bit before going to my sister's room? Rushing back in such heavy rain will catch a chill. Shi Shenji waved his hand, "Tonight I'll stay with you." "Is it okay with sister?" I looked at him uneasily. "Sister will blame you. The Shi household hasn't taken her surname yet. I am still the one who calls the shots." After Shi Shenja finished speaking, he felt annoyed thinking about his legitimate sister making a fuss. He said to the servants, "Don't tell Lin Wanner. If anyone asks, just say I was at mother's place in the latter half of the night." I calculated that Shi Shenji was staying in my room later and later each time, just a little more. But soon, very soon, I would be pregnant. Thinking of the pain of childbirth in my previous life, I involuntarily shuddered. What is wrong? "Brother-in-law, if you want me to lie with you, you'll need to give me some benefits to keep my mouth shut, or I'll tell on you." He looked at me and actually leaned in and kissed me. We had been intimate countless times, yet never once kissed. Tender and ambiguous, it truly felt like lovers who had endured hardships and finally become a couple. "I'll make it all up to you," he said hoarsely, teasing, "Can you handle it?" I giggled coquettishly as I hooked my arms around his waist, falling into a sea of passion. He discovered my clumsy attempts at seduction and was overjoyed beyond expectation. "How could I have ever thought you were boring?" Nothing was more appetizing than a beauty he had personally taught, transforming from pure and shy to craving carnal pleasures. I am a blank canvas for him to paint on, allowing him to express himself freely and fully. The lights were out, and the thunder and rain filling the sky seemed like the Bodhisattva coming to judge my lies and sins. Thunder roars in winter, snow falls in summer. We've already claimed half of that. I've already figured out how to kill Lin Wanner in a way that would truly strike at her heart. And what about Shi Shenji? I gazed tenderly at his profile, gently caressing it. Where he was half asleep and caught my hand. I leaned against his chest, listening to his steady heartbeat. This life was so close within reach, it made me restless. My legitimate sister didn't believe the nonsense about Shi Shenja going to mother's place. The next morning, she barged in early and Shi Shenja in bed. I had already heard Xiaomei's alarmed cry, warning us from outside the door. My sister raised her hand and slapped Xiaomei, then kicked her to the ground. When she slashed open the bed curtains with her sword, my clothes were half off, my legs still wrapped around Shi Shenji's waist. This scene made my sister's face turn ashen in an instant. The golden tasseled bayao on her head went still, and 2 streams of tears immediately fell. The sword also dropped beside Shi Shenji's pillow. I hated her, but sometimes I truly didn't understand her. Wasn't she the one who sent me to them? Why was she crying? Did she think I only knelt by Shi Shenja's bedside every night? Did she think that as long as Shi Shenja didn't spend the night with me, her young husband would never be a whoremonger? She didn't hit Shi Shenji, but raised her hand to slap me, only to be stopped by Shi Shenji. When he saw the sword by the pillow, the guilt on his face vanished instantly. "You are the one who sent her to my bed yourself, so why are you so jealous now?" Shi Shenji shielded me and said coldly, "It is just as well that you know, saves me from making up an excuse." "Shi Shenji, you coward, it is not necessarily that I can't. She still hasn't gotten pregnant. It is you who can't even produce." Before she could finish, Shenja had already slapped her. "Brother-in-law, how could you hit sister for my sake?" Shenja stared blankly at his own hand. Even he himself found it somewhat unbelievable. Shi Shenji didn't hit her for my sake. It was because my legitimate sister had exposed his deepest fear. A man's fear of dying without an heir. My legitimate sister could neither understand nor imagine it. "I hit her for you." "Yes, brother-in-law, you love me. So you instinctively hit sister for me. What else could I say?" Was he supposed to admit his own fear? Shi Shenja also deceived himself. "Yes, I was afraid she would hurt you." "Yes, brother-in-law, you were afraid she would hurt me." My legitimate sister left in tears. That afternoon, the Lin family's legitimate mother came to the Shai residence. She is just a womb woman, A novelty the Marquis is keeping around for fun. How could you lose the dignity of a proper wife? The Lin family's legitimate mother put on the airs of a household matriarch. A few concubines. No matter how many children they bear, none of that matters. What matters most is that you sit back and watch the tigers fight. My legitimate sister was awakened by these words, as if from a dream. That night, my legitimate sister took away my maidservant Xiao Mei. When Xiao Mei came back, her eyes were swollen from crying. The legitimate sister wanted to assign her to Shenji, to share my favor, but Xiao Mei didn't want to. She had someone she liked, Chen Hu, the gatekeeper. She was just waiting for 5 years later, when the master would show mercy and let her go. Then they'd get married. If he truly loves you, of course he won't mind whether you've had a child or not, and it is not for nothing. You'll get money. The legitimate sister laughed again. Besides, I am not taking you as a concubine. Once you've had the child, I'll let you go, and even reward you with some banknotes. Xiao Mei just kowtowed, saying she wasn't worthy of the Marquis. The legitimate sister was already impatient. Of course I know you are not worthy. Telling you is just giving you some face. Don't be ungrateful. Seeing my worry, Xiao Mei wiped her tears hard, shook her head at me and smiled. Miss Lin, don't worry. I won't compete with you. I don't want to compete with you. Can't you plead with the Marquis again? I couldn't bear it. Xiao Yan's eyes had already dimmed. What the madam has decided, no one can change. Maybe it is really like madam said. If he truly loves me, even if I've had a child, his feelings for me won't change. Actually, she didn't believe it either, but could only think this way to comfort herself. In the future, when things change and people are gone, she could still deceive herself that he never really loved her. It is not like that. Madame said how dignified it would be to follow the Marquis. But I don't want to. I don't want to. There should still be a turning point in this matter. I had a plan in my mind. When I went to the old madame's place, she had just woken from her afternoon nap. How long have you been here? Why didn't you say anything? I shook my head, refusing to speak. The old nanny nearby hurriedly took the Heart Sutra I had copied and the note I had written, and presented them to the old madam. The note said that yesterday I dreamed of a bodhisattva handing me a baby boy, telling me I would conceive within a month, and to show my sincerity, I must copy the Heart Sutra daily and cannot speak until I become pregnant. And during this month, the Marquis must not take any concubines into the residence, so as not to disturb the fertility spirits. The old madam was taken aback. Though she didn't quite believe it, she didn't dare break the taboo. After all, the bodhisattva was only making things difficult for me alone, and taking a concubine wasn't so urgent. It couldn't wait a month. On the way back, Xiao Mei looked at me nervously. Madam, what if this month? I gently placed my hand on hers, signaling her to be at ease. You didn't have to go this far for me. What if the Marquis and the old madam come to despise you? She didn't know I once owed her many kindnesses. In my previous life, Xiao Mei wasn't like the other servants, who fawned over the powerful and trampled the weak, mistreating me on the legitimate sister's orders. When the legitimate sister gave me spoiled food, she would share half of her own with me. If Shenji was rough with me, she would ask Chen Hu to help buy medicine for my injuries. Such a kind girl shouldn't rot in the mud like me. Don't be afraid, I stroked her face. Big sister is here. Actually, Miss Kui, be careful. Ahu told me that the maidservant Chunner beside Madam often carries letters in and out. The Lin family's people coming this time is probably because Madam wrote something in her letters. I was taken aback. No, wait. In my previous life, I never heard of Lin Wanner writing family letters. Besides, the Lin family lives nearby. If there is anything, she could just send someone to pass along the message. Then who is she writing to? I am afraid it can only be Prince Yong. I thought for a moment. If it is convenient, could you have Chen Hu keep an eye on it? Best if he intercepts the letters. That is no problem. Chunner loves to play and wander around. Sometimes she comes back early and Chen Hu and the others help watch her packages anyway. At the beginning of the month, my legitimate sister still scoffed at me for believing in the Bodhisattva's dream message. How superstitious. I put on an anxious expression. You mustn't disrespect the Bodhisattva, or the Bodhisattva will take offense. My legitimate sister sneered contemptuously, utterly foolish, believing in that clay statue. Shenja felt sorry that I had to copy sutras every day, making it inconvenient to speak. But I considerately held his hand. As long as I can bear an heir for the Marquis, this little grievance is nothing. Half a month later, just like in my previous life, I became pregnant. The old madam was so overjoyed that she burned incense in the Buddhist hall for 3 days, constantly murmuring that the Bodhisattva had blessed them with a child, and the Shi family would surely prosper. My legitimate sister looked at my flat belly with jealous hatred, yet she also had some doubts. It is probably just a coincidence. At night, Shenja was overjoyed beyond expectation, trying to listen to the non-existent fetal heartbeat. Quer, I am going to be a father. I nodded softly, looking at him with a smile. Husband, what should we name this child? It was the first time I called him husband. Shenja had no objection, and he held me tightly. The Shi family has an heir. It is all thanks to you, Quer. Shenja and the old madam were overjoyed. Rewards flowed into my room like water. This is too extravagant. I looked at Shenja uneasily. Will my legitimate sister be unhappy? It is from your husband, the father of your child. Shenja picked out a golden tassel buyout for me. You deserve it. I just lowered my head and shyly murmured an acknowledgement. You don't know how important this child is to me, Quer. Shenja looked at me seriously. I always thought the Shi family line would end with me. I was even afraid that I couldn't. Who said that? I nestled into his arms. I'll go defend my husband's honor. How would you defend it? Seeing me blush, Shenja became even more affectionate. Quer, I've been thinking lately, whether marrying your sister was a mistake. No, you beasts are a match made in heaven. She is novel and interesting, but sometimes too unconventional, so she seems restless. Shenji sighed. Sometimes I wish I had married a woman like you. The inner quarters would be peaceful. The next day, the old madam took me to pay respects to my legitimate sister, actually to warn her not to have any designs on my belly. My legitimate sister's eyes stared at me fixedly, from the golden hairpins and pearl flowers on my head, to my silk skirt just as gorgeous as hers. Now Lin Quer looked nothing like the cautious and plain girl she was when she first entered the mansion. Decked in jewels and finery, standing beside her Lin Wanner, it was an unspoken provocation. Finally, my legitimate sister's gaze fell on my belly. She wished she could cut me open, dig out the flesh and blood, and plant it into her own body. She was really strange. She wanted the self-respect and self-love of a lifelong monogamous union, yet deceived herself that without an official title, it didn't count as betrayal. She wasn't like the noble household mistresses I'd seen, numbly and obediently taking in concubines for their husbands, treating neither the concubines nor themselves as human. Nor was she like the pleasure quarter women I'd seen, who only sought their lovers' affection, living freely, carefree, one day at a time. She seemed to wander between two sets of rules, sometimes dazzling and clear-eyed, yet sometimes torn apart in agony. I curtsied. To outsiders, this child was born to you. Legitimate sister, from today onwards, I'll have to trouble you to help conceal it. My legitimate sister's maid Chunner had already sewn some fake bellies, wearing them at the dragon boat and mid-autumn banquets. My legitimate sister could fool everyone. I intercepted the letters between my legitimate sister and Prince Yang. I forged replies imitating my legitimate sister's and Prince Yang's handwriting. I told my legitimate sister that I intended to dismiss those 5 concubines, keeping only the position of princess consort of Yang for her alone, waiting only to meet at the meditation room behind Tanxiang Mountain on the Ghost Festival, then elope together. I also told the Prince of Yang, my younger sister can treat you well in my place. She hasn't been betrothed yet. At the meditation room behind Tanxiang Mountain during Zhongyuan, I am willing to be the matchmaker for you two. According to my plan, on Zhongyuan Day, 3 things would be exposed. My legitimate sister's fake pregnancy, her secret meeting with the Prince of Yang, and forcing a decent woman into prostitution, enough to make her life worse than death. I carefully laid the groundwork, just waiting for everything to blow up on Zhongyuan. I knew my plan had too many holes. For example, the two of them might notice the handwriting was slightly different. For example, my legitimate sister might confront the Prince of Yang before Zhongyan. For example, the Prince of Yang might throw away all his dignity for my legitimate sister. No matter which accident occurred, my legitimate sister would come out unscathed. Only I would be shattered to pieces. But I had no heaven-defying abilities, no knowledge of medicine or poison. I could only gamble. When my legitimate sister saw the Prince of Yang's reply, she couldn't contain her joy. For days straight, I monopolized Shenjia, and she actually didn't get angry anymore. But things with the Prince of Yang weren't going as smoothly as I'd hoped. The Prince of Yang rejected my legitimate sister. I have no other intentions toward your younger sister. If the Prince of Yang wouldn't come, I'd be missing a crucial element that could truly destroy her. It is just that day, she stood there, looking very much like you at 17. I paced anxiously around my room. Did the plan need to change? Should I change the plan and expose my legitimate sister's fake pregnancy and forcing a woman into prostitution in front of everyone? But that would only destroy Lin Kuer's gentle and obedient mask. Once Shi Shenjia and the others realized what happened, the remaining methods would no longer work. Something's not right. I have an uneasy feeling. The Prince of Yang has already taken 5 concubines. If I were truly assigned to him, he shouldn't refuse. Besides, at the spring banquet, the way the Prince of Yang looked at me was the same as those male patrons at the music house. Then there is only one possibility left. The Prince of Yang has already seen through my forged handwriting. In his eyes, I must be a scheming woman who relies on her looks to climb up to the powerful. I've been deceiving him from the start, lying that I truly loved Shi Shenji to escape. But after all this time, the Shi household hasn't taken me as a concubine, and my legitimate sister is pregnant. My path to climbing up in the Marquise's household isn't going smoothly, so now I want to replace my legitimate sister and latch onto him. If he thinks this way, he definitely won't let me have my way. If I invite him to a secret meeting on the Zhongyuan festival, he won't take the risk. I pondered for a moment and caught a glimpse of the elegantly dressed woman in the mirror, frowning deeply. I curled up the corners of my lips, and that woman smiled back at me. I stroked the golden tassel hairpin by my temple, my legitimate sister's favorite. How could I forget? The protagonists of this play have always been my legitimate sister and me. As for which man to use, doesn't it not matter? Prince of Yang, you may have figured out that I am ruthless, but can you figure out that everyone has hidden agendas? I was certain the Prince of Yang had seen through my forgery, so I used the excuse of the Bodhisattva appearing in a dream to have the old madam confine my legitimate sister. This way, my legitimate sister's messages wouldn't be able to get out. My belly grew bigger day by day. By the day of the Ghost Festival, it had already been over 5 months. Husband, I want to go to the temple to pray for blessings. Afraid of putting Shenji in a difficult position, I smiled and said, I'll wear a veil. If anyone asks brother-in-law can just say I am my legitimate sister. With this belly of mine, everyone will assume I am her. Xiao Mei had won over Chun'er and urged her to give Lin Wan'er a plain look, styling her hair in a maiden's bun rather than the updo of a married woman. Chen Hu deliberately relaxed the guards, allowing my legitimate sister to escape. Smoke swirled inside the meditation room, making the figure seen from behind even more indistinct. The unexpected turn I had anticipated still happened. Xiao Mei told me that Prince Yang had paused briefly outside the meditation room to peek in, thinking the one lost in passion inside was me. He left in disgust with a flick of his sleeve, yet halfway stopped a naive young monk and instructed him to deliver water to the meditation room where my legitimate sister was. How wonderful. I almost laughed out loud. How come I can never learn your viciousness and think of dragging innocent people into the mess? I considered myself already rotten to the core, yet could only think of making my legitimate sister lose face and taking her place. When Shishenja helped me down from the carriage, we came face to face with Prince Yang. He gave a slight curtsy, and surprisingly, he didn't recognize me at first glance. Until I lifted my face. Seeing my decorations just as glamorous and luxurious as my legitimate sister's, then seeing my bulging belly, Prince Yang was completely stunned. How could you? How could you be here? How could the pregnant one be you? Then who is that one in the meditation room? Prince Yang felt like he was plunged into ice water in an instant. He didn't even have time to question me before hurrying back to the meditation room. What is wrong? Want to go take a look? See, Shenji was naturally happy to watch his rival's drama unfold. Smoke swirled inside the meditation room. The aphrodisiac had been put in my legitimate sister's tea, and she had drunk it before leaving. My legitimate sister was disheveled, pulling at the young novice monk in a lustful daze, yet calling out Prince Yang's name. The temple monks were furious. Such defilement of the imperial temple demanded an explanation. Pilgrims coming and going whispered among themselves. Surely everyone would know by tomorrow. Madame Marquis Shi. That is not right. Madame and Marquis Shi are right over there. Look at that belly. She is still wearing an unmarried maiden's hairstyle. Definitely not the madam. Then this is... Shenji made his choice even faster than I did. In that instant, he forgot all his promises of forever, and kicked my legitimate sister square in the chest. Lin Kuei, how can you be so shameless? Without waiting for Prince Yang to question anything, I raised my hand and slapped her hard across the face. How could you do something so disgraceful to our family, sister? Everyone understood in an instant, shaking their heads and sighing at the family's misfortune. A single slap wasn't enough to bring her to her senses. 7 or 8 maidservants held her down. During the struggle, as I had instructed, someone, I don't know who, without regard for their strength, left a deep, bloody gash on my legitimate sister's face. This was Lin Kuei's mark. Legitimate sister, from now on you'll have to live in this world in Lin Kuei's place. The intense pain brought her back to her senses. In just an instant, she understood all the scheming. You schemed against me, you slut. She lunged at my belly like a madwoman. But Shi Shenjie kicked her hard in the chest. This wicked woman has gone mad. Take her back to the Shi mansion and lock her up. The maidservants covered her mouth, afraid she might say something else that would disgrace the family. Shi Shenjie was extremely annoyed and hurriedly got into the carriage. Passing by me, Li Lang said self-mockingly, I underestimated you. I curtsied, it is cold and windy. Your Highness should head back early. Why are you the one who is pregnant? Li Lang understood the whole story, yet still couldn't figure this out. What exactly do you want? What do I want? How laughable. From the very beginning, I never wanted anything. My legitimate sister was locked up, in the very same cell where I had lived in my previous life. After calming down, Shenji ultimately didn't take her life. Shenji felt there were many suspicious points about this matter, but couldn't sort them out. My legitimate sister naturally couldn't expose her correspondence with Prince Yang, so she stubbornly insisted she lost consciousness after drinking water, and didn't know how she ended up at the temple. She was clever, immediately making Shenji suspect me. Ixi Shenjie still had a trace of affection and pity for her. Since there are suspicions, let's conduct a search. My room was clean, yet letters between my legitimate sister and Prince Yang were found. Letters with her lover naturally wouldn't say a single good word about Shi Shenjie. When those letters were thrown in my legitimate sister's face, disappointment was written all over Shenji's face. My legitimate sister knelt on the ground, crying bitterly. Prince Yang and I are truly innocent. If you don't believe me, you can interrogate Chun'er. She has been by my side the longest. Chun'er's face turned deathly pale as she hurriedly knelt and kowtowed. My lord, our madam asked me to style her hair like an unmarried maiden today. If madam hadn't ordered it, this servant wouldn't dare, nor could I do such a thing. My legitimate sister pushed Chun'er away, voice hoarse with rage, and glared at me. You are lying. It is all because that lowly servant Kuei bribed you. Speak up, you bitch. Why don't you dare to speak? The woman's crying and shouting gave Shenjie a headache. I didn't need to do anything, just stay silent. Standing beside Shenjie, gentle and beautiful in my silence, like a merciful Madonna, forgiving all the crazed accusations. Won't you say a few words for yourself? Shi Shenja leaned tiredly against the grand chair, rubbed between his brows, and looked up at me. I trust my husband as my husband trusts me. I gently pressed his temples. If my husband says I am guilty, I'll accept it. Xi Shenja silently gazed at my legitimate sister for a long time, from her hair bun to her wound, from her heaving chest to her flat belly. His gaze was nostalgic yet icy cold, like a winding snake crawling down her body. My legitimate sister trembled with fear. Clutching his sleeve tightly, "It is queer. She resents me for sending her to your bed. She plotted this." I didn't know what kind of privileged treatment her original world had given her, making her naively and foolishly cling to the truth. She still believed in rules, believed that as long as she was innocent, she would be given an explanation. But once the door closed, Shenji was her entire world. Perhaps my legitimate sister would never understand that in Shenji's heart, in all men's hearts, there lurked a venomous snake. Years of past affection had lulled the snake to sleep. Now it had awakened. "Warner," Xi Shenja spoke. My legitimate sister scrambled up joyfully, grabbing Shenja's boots. But that call of Warner was no longer meant for her. "Let's go, Warner." Xi Shenja didn't look at her, took my hand and held it in his palm. "Your sister is hopeless. Don't be sad." I gently shook my head. "Sister, reflect on your mistakes here. If you figure things out, I am willing to give you a chance." I gave my legitimate sister a chance, and she didn't disappoint me. Poisoned soup was served at the banquet. It didn't poison Shi Shenji and me to death, but it killed old Madam Shi. To be honest, compared to Shi Shenji and my legitimate sister, sometimes I was more afraid of old Madam Shi. I often wondered if this woman who had spent half her life immersed in inner courtyard struggles could see through my disguise and schemes at a glance, like a bodhisattva sitting high in a temple. Fortunately, she died. My legitimate sister refused to plead guilty, only saying I was the one who poisoned. Shi Shenji bestowed poisoned wine. Afternoon sunlight shone through the prison cell window. I sat before her, serving her food and pouring wine, just like when she tricked me into entering the manor. "You actually hate me and Shi Shenja to the core, right? So you've taken revenge on me, and he is next, isn't he?" I just smiled and shook my head, sighing. "I deeply love Marquis Shi, but I never thought of competing with you. I only wanted to be a concubine. It is perfectly normal for the Marquis to have multiple wives and concubines. Why can't you understand that?" My legitimate sister froze, then gave me a contemptuous glance. "What would a woman like you who only knows how to please men understand? In our era, there were no concubines." I listened in a daze as she told her stories from before, reluctant to interrupt her. I really envied her. So there was another world where one didn't need to destroy oneself like this to seek justice. At this point, my legitimate sister suddenly thought of something. "Was it really you who harmed me at the temple during the ghost festival?" I shook my head and looked at her honestly. "I don't know why that happened to you. In that situation, I could only help the Marquis cover it up. I didn't lie to you. I've never lied to anyone in this manner. I've also told you this wine is poisoned. Oh dear sister, the truth can't be told to anyone, not even to the dead." What surprised me was that even knowing it was poisoned wine, my legitimate sister still drank it all in one gulp. I knew she was stupid, but I still didn't understand why she was this stupid. "Once you are dead, you have nothing left." Perhaps due to the poison taking effect, a nearly fanatical and intoxicated smile appeared on my legitimate sister's face. "Though you've bewitched the Marquis's heart, once I am dead, he'll be filled with regret. He'll torture and kill you who murdered me, and spend the rest of his life in regret for misjudging people." That was a kind of spiritual victory and satisfaction I couldn't understand. At that moment, I truly didn't understand her. Was this also what that era taught her? I'll die in the prime of his love for me, becoming the moonlight he remembers his entire life. Even if you enjoy wealth and glory, you'll never win Shi Shenji's heart. You can never defeat a dead person. She tried to make me fear with her own fears. "Then after you die, I'll take over your shops, your name, your glory, everything of yours." I smoothed my skirt and stood up, looking back from where the light shone. "As you said, legitimate sister, I'll live on well, even if I spend my life in wealth and glory with no one loving me. My legitimate sister was hastily buried. I observed Shenji, wanting to see if my legitimate sister's assumptions would be verified. Whether Shenji was sad, whether he regretted, number on the third day after my legitimate sister's burial, he ate as usual. I took over all of my legitimate sister's shops. After staying up several nights, I had already sorted out the situation of the shops, medicine shops, fabric stores, and many inns and restaurants. Everything was as if nothing had happened. Shunja still didn't think of my legitimate sister. Even on my legitimate sister's first 7th-day memorial, he touched my belly. The pregnancy's getting along. It should be fine, right? I felt a wave of nausea, leaning over the bedside and vomiting my guts out. I pushed Si Shenji away. It is not good for the child. Only then did Si Shenji start to feel a bit of regret. If I'd known, I would have spared her life. At least I'd have somewhere to amuse myself now. You'll need to arrange for taking in a few concubines. Unable to get any satisfaction from me during my pregnancy, his eyes turned to the pleasure quarters. The brothel madam took money from both sides like a leech smelling blood. How could she let him go? Aphrodisiac drugs, mood-enhancing wine, Persian dancers, Western region courtesans. Catching a venereal disease was a perfectly normal thing. Small, bright syphilitic sores began to form inside and outside Shenji's skin. Even urinating required inserting a reed tube. Calling a doctor. Of course we had to call one. Good doctors prescribed countless medicines, poured them down his throat, and Shenji was so bitter he vomited up even his bile. Quack doctors used red-hot scissors to cut off those ripe bayberry sores. It was a slow form of torture by branding. As for Madame Marquise Sha, a woman was ultimately fragile. She knelt before the Bodhisattva for hours on end, praying to Guanyin who saves the suffering, to also save her husband. It was a very clear day. Shenji was already hanging by a thread. He lay on the bed, wounds covering his body densely, like a snake stripped of its scales. He called me to his bedside, instructed me on the child's name, and made me swear to remain chaste for him after his death. I knelt obediently by the bedside. Husband. By the time of the child's 100th day after birth, it will be the season of the spring banquet. Zishenja actually grew nostalgic. I still remember you mentioned the spring banquet, that you fell in love with me at first sight. When he got emotional, he reached out, wanting to touch my face, but didn't even have the strength to lift his hand anymore. Say it again, say it again. I lowered my head and wiped my tears. But I am so afraid that without my husband here, he will die from a high fever during the spring banquet season. Ixi Shenja froze. He suddenly widened his eyes and struggled to grab at my hem. What do you mean? That is my seed. You. He fell from the bed and stopped breathing moments later. The white funeral banners at the Marquise's residence were taken down and hung up again. With my big belly, wearing mourning clothes, I knelt before the spirit tablet again and again until I fainted. How pitiful. A woman who has lost her man is the most pitiful. What good is such a large estate? It is nothing but a cold mountain of gold. When Prince Yang, Li Lang, came to offer condolences, it was already late evening after all the guests had left. I underestimated you. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Is that it? I sensed that the third arrow I had drawn a year ago was now aimed at my heart. Did Prince Yang truly love my legitimate sister enough to seek revenge for her? I didn't believe it. If it were love, why would there be 5 concubines? Why not abandon everything and elope with her? Why not lend her a hand when she was locked in a prison cell? That day when leaving Tanxiang Temple, I brushed past Prince Yang, seeing his fury, and didn't miss his irritation either. The moonlight he could only admire from afar had become 2 pale, fleshy bodies copulating. When others suspected that person was my legitimate sister, their expressions looking at Prince Yang were full of mockery and ridicule. As if asking him, the woman you've yearned for all these years is both stupid and vulgar. I didn't defend myself, just quietly looked at him while carefully protecting my belly. Nothing needed to be explained, nor did I need to justify myself. These days, I've discovered something more useful than the identity of wife-mother. He lifted my unpowdered face, its plainness making it all the more striking, and sighed self-deprecatingly. It is precisely this face you use to do evil that made even me underestimate you. No wonder they were played to death by you. I didn't speak. The Prince of Yong sighed. You don't need to fear me. I already know all the causes. I admire smart and beautiful women. It is just that I often wondered these past days. If I had met you earlier, any earlier, I would have become your sixth concubine. You would have been furious at my premarital unchastity, and cast me aside from then on. He loves smart and beautiful women, but loves himself more. The Prince of Yong was stunned for a moment, then actually laughed. I heard Madame Xi's calligraphy has improved greatly lately. When Madame Xi has time, I'll ask you for a piece of calligraphy. Just as my legitimate sister cursed me, I indeed spent the latter half of my life in glory and wealth, enjoying endless leisure. I took over my legitimate sister's shop business and opened a charity hall and a medical clinic, hoping to atone for my sin and regret toward that child at the spring banquet. I was truly afraid of the two shackles of being a wife and mother, afraid of this child's future judgment of me. There were many 100-day-old children in the charity hall, and there would be good children suitable to be the Shy family's heir. Zi and was one. He was filial, obedient, and well-behaved, with dark bright eyes just like that child's. If there was one thing not ideal, it was the curiosity and liveliness unique to a 7-year-old child. He was curious about that prison cell in the backyard. He wasn't allowed to enter, always tugging at my sleeve coquettishly. Mother, what is hidden in there? I knew I couldn't hide it, so I led him and pushed open the door. Inside was dead silence, with the scent of sandalwood accumulated over the years. In the chamber was a small memorial tablet. It belonged to Lin Quer's child. Mother once had a younger sister. You should call her Auntie. Auntie had a little boy, but later Auntie was gone, and the little boy was gone too. Xian leaned against me understandingly, wiping away my tears. Mother, don't be sad. Anner won't ask anymore. With Anner here, Mother isn't sad. I held Xian's hand and looked back at the lush backyard in early autumn. Years of old grudges had all been buried by the vines and grass. A little sparrow was hopping around in the backyard, yet couldn't find a satisfying branch to perch on after all. After all, unlike humans, bound for a lifetime, fate's adrift like duckweed. She just leisurely pecked at her feathers, then turned her head, spread her wings, and flew off into the blue sky.